All right, we will begin. Tonight we're going to look at the cost of being fooled, the cost of doing away with truth, the cost of delusion. Now we know that there's a strong delusion that the Lord's going to send during the tribulation, but we're leading up to that, and I think we're into a time of strong delusion, but not that which 2 Thessalonians talks about, but a very important one nonetheless. So, Proverbs 28:1 says, "The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion." Now that's a good memory verse for you. Whenever you are hesitant, whenever you're unsure, you need to just determine what the right thing to do is, and you will be propelled to be bold as a lion. But if you're not doing the right thing, then you're going to be in the category probably of the wicked who are afraid. They're just afraid. They're afraid somebody might be pursuing them. Nobody is, but they're afraid somebody might be. So that's the two different categories. You've got the courageous and the cowards. And if you ever find yourself in the situation where you are afraid to move forward, you need to back up and take this verse, determine what the right thing to do is, and pursue that. And if you do, you will have the courage this verse talks about. And then in Galatians 6:7, we think about our world mocking God. Psalm 2 talks about how the rulers of this world mock God, and in the end, God's going to mock them. And this verse fits it very well. Be not deceived, Paul said. You can mock God, but you really can't mock God. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. So the world thinks they're getting by with some things by denying God, denying Him His rightful place, but they're not getting by with anything. God is not going to be mocked. He will repay. So we're going to talk tonight about the resultant loss of the past couple of years via deception and delusion. So the last couple of years of COVID-19 have been, I think, unlike anything the world has seen. I think it's really been unlike. There have been other cataclysmic and gigantic things happen. The world flood that happened under Noah, of course, was a worldwide thing of its own. But this deception that we're living right now, the last couple of years, was predicted by Jesus, right? Jesus said, "Don't be deceived." In his private briefing to the disciples in Matthew 24, he said, "Do not be deceived." And the reason is because there's going to be somebody trying to deceive us. And we're living under a huge bubble of deception that's going on. We were just talking earlier about, so there's a couple of different COVID tests. And now it has come out that one of those COVID tests cannot differentiate between, in one case, it can't tell the difference between the flu and COVID. Okay, now think about what that means. The CDC just reported that in the last week or two, and they said now we know where the flu was last year. In the total numbers of COVID, they now had to remove all those people who just had the flu. Okay, so the 10, 20,000, however many it was that died of the flu last year, they were lumped in with the COVID. So that COVID number is not as big. My point is, was that intentional? Was that on purpose? That's just one little illustration. Walter was telling me there's the COVID test cannot differentiate between Delta and Omicron, which that doesn't surprise me. It's a coronavirus, right? So, do we know anything we think we know? Now, I hate to even bring this up. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but the truth is what it is. If you look, and you can go search it out, you can find the numbers of America. You can go find out the numbers in Italy, in UK, Australia. The number of people in the hospital with Omicron are the vaccinated. The number of people in the hospital with Omicron are the vaccinated. Now that's exactly 180 degrees from what the president's been saying for a couple of weeks. He's either lying or he's just completely incompetent. But you can go research the numbers. It's not really that hard to find. There are people who are tracking the numbers. My point is, we were told, if you get the vaccine, this will all go away. If you get the vaccine, you'll be safe. Those things were not true. So the truth is a big deal. Muddying the waters. I suppose there could be occasions when muddying the waters is something to do. Generally speaking, it just makes it harder to see the fish or whatever you're trying to do. And I love what one preacher said, the way he described what the devil does. It's the smudging of the gray. You think about a piece of paper and you've got some graphite, some pencil markings on that, and the devil just changes it up by smudging the gray a little bit. That's how the devil works. The devil came to Adam and Eve in the garden, and he said, is that what God said? Or did you misunderstand him? Just ask it a question. That's how the devil works. And we're seeing that operate big time around us today. And there's a cost for that. So I want to share with you, some of you on Facebook would have seen this. Oh, there we go. This is almost beyond the pale. A teacher claims she was fired for not meowing at a student. So this substitute teacher comes in class. Substitute teacher. And she's got a student who identifies as a girl, but he's a boy. So proper grammar is she. She actually has multiple genders, so it's they. Even thought she as an individual. This is all just so confusing. So I'll let you go look this up if you want to. What happened was the substitute teacher came into class and she's taking roll. And this teacher said accurately the most important thing that a teacher does in the day, at least for the school's concern, is take roll because they get paid based on how many kids they have at school. That's the thing. That's more important than anything else to the administrators at school, no matter how they'll lie to you. They get paid for the number of kids that are at school. So she's taking roll and she's going down the list and she hears a meow. What's going on? She continues to take roll and she hears a meow. And the kids finally tell her, this girl or boy identifies as a cat. And you're supposed to respond to her by meowing back. At her break, she went to the office and was told by the administrators, your services are no longer required or wanted here. If you can't identify with the children the way that they want to be, then you can't teach here.
Where was this at? Do you know?
Well, it was on TikTok, so it certainly must have been true. I'm not quite sure.
Just curious.
Yeah, that would be a good question.
That's crazy. And that poor kid.
Yeah, the poor kid. Isn't that the truth? I don't see. That's a very good question. I didn't look up where it was.
It's okay.
I would like to know that, though. So somebody Google that and find out where the meow took place. So the cost of doing away with the truth. Now we don't have just boys who want to be girls and girls who want to be boys and in-betweens to the extent where there's something like 24 different genders. Right? Is it 24? I think they have identified 24 different genders. Now they have to add to that if they identify as a cat. Now, you know, I laugh at that, but as she points out, that poor kid. All they're doing is enabling her going away from the truth. Her parents are enabling her, the school's enabling her. And how messed up is this kid going to be? Well, I hate to tell this kid, but most cats get hit on the road and they become roadkill. But that's a whole other thing. So the cost of doing away from the truth, going away from the truth, getting rid of the truth, we're living in this bubble of untruth that's going on in so many different ways that our freedoms are restricted. And we could talk about this all night. But our freedoms, and maybe not us here in Missouri, it's really good to live in Missouri. I mean, it's really good to be in Missouri in a lot of different ways. But if you live in New York or California or Washington, you're restricted, and it's not based on truth. It's based on untruths.
But that stuff is happening in Missouri because my daughter had that experience today. Substitute teacher wrote his preferred pronouns on the board, and it was he, they.
So her daughter, our beloved Gwendolyn, in Spanish class, a substitute teacher came in because the Spanish teacher quit. And I don't blame her. But substitute teacher comes in and he wants to be referred to as they.
Well, his preferred pronouns written on the board are he, they.
So
There's
when
nothing
Gwendolyn
to
wants to
about
ask a question, she has to say he.
She's not sure. She's just hoping he doesn't come back.
Yeah, no kidding.
She said she was uncomfortable
Well, she should be.
because she knows the ridiculousness of all this.
So yeah, it is happening. Happening right here in Missouri. Probably happening closer to home than we want to admit. So another victim of the truth is the church. The church so-called in America. We can no longer speak with a clear voice about right and wrong. And the Southern Baptist Convention is getting more messed up by the day. The Southern Baptist Convention is led by a bunch of people who are woke. But it's not just Southern Baptist, it's across the board. It's happening. People, in fact, the testimony of a lot of people is they shut down because of COVID, 2.5 years ago, whatever it was. And when their churches began to wake back up and began to meet again together, they discovered that their pastors and leaders had become woke. And there are people who are in distress today because they don't know what to do about a church. I mean, they love their church. They're in this church that was a good Bible-believing church, and now they're all woke. And if you don't know what woke is, does anybody not know what woke means? Okay. Woke is the term that Black Lives Matters came up with when you understand that you're really actually racist. When you understand just that you are racist and how racist you are, when you understand that, when you get it, you're woke.
Where did he come up with the name for it? W-O-K-E. Does each letter mean something?
No, I don't know about it. I haven't seen. Huh?
They just woke up to it.
They just woke up. Yeah, they woke. W-O-K-E. And so once you get woke, now your job, your whole existence is you, how would I even describe it? You need to become an ally of a black person or all black people.
Isn't it also too like realizing you are a white oppressor or?
Right, that's all a part of the same thing. You see me use that wheel of the,
Privilege.
yeah. And so you've heard the term your whiteness.
So this woke is actually just another word for being aware.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you woke up. I didn't know I was a racist, and now I know that.
So if they say aware, it wouldn't get any attention. They say something like
That's true. Good point. Yes, marketing. Yeah. Woke sounds a whole lot more interesting to talk about than I have become aware. So there are churches across the country that they're now so all in on this wokeness that they preach about it and they're obsessed about it, and they tell their people that they need to identify the whiteness that they have. And I'll give you an extreme example. So what do you do if you're woke? What if you wake up and you realize that you're a racist? One example, there are thousands of them. One example, you sell your property to a black family for half the cost.
I've seen white people bowing down to black people and kissing their feet because of it.
I've heard about that.
It's crazy.
I've got to ask them. Okay, along all this and related to the churches that are doing this and whatever, is there any explanation by those pastors to their people that you're aware of that says this is the reason we need to be so this way? Or are they trying to overcompensate in such a way that they're not bothered anymore?
Yeah, they're overcompensating clearly, and that's making them feel better about themselves. I'm woke, so now I'll get my church woke, and we will be allies to the black people. And the problem is, there's never an end to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So the crowd that cancels, the cancel crowd, right? You understand, that is such a picture of the antithesis of Christianity. In Christianity, if I sin, what's my solution? The blood of Jesus, and I can be forgiven. And you can't point your finger at me if I have truly confessed my sin and come to Christ. In the cancel crowd, you get canceled, there's no resolution for that. There's nothing you can do about it. You're canceled.
And there's a lot of black people too that see all of this and think it's absolutely.
Oh, I would say the majority.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the majority of the black people see it the same way as the majority of white people do. It's just foolishness. But they're not the ones who are marketing this. It's Black Lives Matters. It's Antifa. And now all of these woke, I cannot believe how many woke preachers there are that have gone along with this in the country.
Again, then, wouldn't that clearly define the lack of truth in all of this, so that, you know, once you run across and you know what it's not, you have to make a decision.
I like John MacArthur's, and there's a lot of things about MacArthur I don't like. One, he's a Calvinist, but he's a dispensational Calvinist, so I guess there's that to like about him. Anyway, MacArthur said fairly early on in this whole thing of social justice, that's what this is. When you realize you're a white person, and that automatically makes you a racist, just the fact that you're white. You've been raised in such a mentality from your childhood up that you can't help it. You don't even realize how white you are and how prejudiced you are. But once you realize that, you become a part of the social justice warrior crowd. This is what it's all about. My mission in life is getting everybody to understand how white they are and how prejudiced they are and how we need to bow down and kiss the feet of black people. Okay? That becomes their mission. They're social justice warriors. John MacArthur said, he nailed it. He said the problem is people are incapable of justice. He said, forget the social. That's something that you can add on to it, but it's not really a thing. Justice is justice. And the only one capable of knowing what is actually just is God. So, where are you going to find out what is just according to God? It's in His book. Yeah. Okay. So, because of this untruth that's going on in so many different ways, the church is no longer able to speak clearly to gender, to justice, to any of these things. We've given it away.
According to those that say we should be woke, the truth is that we still can and should, right?
Well, and we're trying to be shut down. There are they're encroaching, the government and everybody with power is encroaching more and more on the church. So what is COVID-19? Let me tell you what COVID-19 is. It's not a virus. It's an attempt to shut down the preaching of the gospel of Christ. The tools they use, a virus is one of those tools. It is an attempt to shut down. Tim Keller. Anybody recognize Tim Keller? He's written books. He's a huge name in Christianity among those who write books and all that bunch. Tim Keller is a huge name. He's pastor of a Presbyterian church, New York, I think it is. They just quietly, it's a big church, it's a huge church. They quietly just sent a letter and said, if you have been vaccinated, you're welcome to sit in the main auditorium. If not, you can sit in the balcony.
How long before you can go to church at all in his church?
That's what I'm talking about. Incrementally, they're shutting down, slowly but surely, as they can. The devil is shutting down the preaching of the gospel. Now, you're not going to be able to do it, but that's what's going on. If you think this is about a virus or health, you've misunderstood the hand behind the scene. Satan. Yes.
Speaking of John MacArthur, he got labeled as hate speech by YouTube.
I'm sure. Probably got canceled and he's off YouTube. I don't know.
He was talking about the LG, whatever they are.
Alphabet.
Yeah, the alphabet people. Yeah. And they labeled him as a hate speech.
Well, now think about that. So have I. Right? I've probably said worse things than MacArthur in my preaching over the last couple of years. I'm a little fish. He's a big fish. It doesn't make news if they cut me off. It makes news if they cut MacArthur. These people now, what was it, Rand Paul? He said, I wonder if these snotty-nosed little YouTube people will come to my office. You know? That's what they are. They're a bunch of snowflakes. You know what a snowflake is? Somebody tell me what a snowflake is.
Somebody who melts in adversity. Easily offended.
There's somebody who gets insulted at everything. There's somebody who can't take any kind of debate. They can't be told they're wrong about anything. No confrontation at all. There should never be confrontation. Those are snowflakes.
You mean like Dr. Fauci?
Well, Dr. Fauci is the modern day Mengele, Joseph Mengele. By the way, Fox News, you think they're your friend? They're closer to being your friend than MSNBC. But so Fox News had a gal on there. What was her name? Laura? No. Laura. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't think. Anyway, she's a contributor, so she was on one of the shows, and she said Fauci is the modern day Joseph Mengele. Y'all know who Joseph Mengele is?
I don't.
Okay, Joseph Mengele was the doctor, Dr. Death. I don't know whether he was at Dachau. He was at one of the concentration camps, or maybe all of them. And he did the experiments where he would take twins.
Okay, I know who that is. I didn't realize it. Yeah. I know that, he was horrible.
Beyond the pale horrible. I mean, he would take twins and do unspeakable things to one and watch it die and see the effect on the other. And that's mild compared to what he actually did. She compared Fauci to that, and she's been canceled off Fox. Now, so is there any evidence that Fauci is like that? Well, Fauci's the one that funded and authorized where they would take beagles and do things to them, and when the beagles couldn't take it, they drugged them. So they had to be, they put them in these boxes and let gnats or some kind of fruit flies or something eat at them to see how long it would take and the effect it would be on them.
It
Well,
was
that-
mosquitoes, wasn't it?
Mosquitoes, I don't know what it was.
I can't remember.
But they had to drug the dogs so they could do that. Now, Joseph Mengele was a perfect illustration of who Fauci is.
He did something to monkeys too.
Oh, I'm sure we probably don't know the half of it.
Her name is Laura Logan.
Laura Logan.
Well, whatever they do to animals, they'll eventually do with people and get out of it.
They probably
Yeah.
already are.
Yeah. So, and I said this Sunday, they're not all about making abortion on demand so that if a woman gets pregnant, she can have an abortion if she wants to. No. No, that's the first step. We're coming to the place where now they're going to say, we have too many people in this country, you're going to have an abortion. You're going to get an abortion. You have 2 children, the rest of them have to be aborted. You won't have a choice in the matter.
They did that in China.
Oh, yeah. And did you see, it was just today that it came out that China is now in a real bad way because they're beginning to go backwards on population. Now you think, well, the Chinese, there's too many of them now. That's not the case. It's a huge country. It's like half the world. And they've got a real problem because of what they did. They drowned the baby girls for decades.
Pharaoh's day.
Yeah, exactly. The devil has a fixation with death. Yes.
I heard some time back, I can't remember the exact figure, but I think it's 2.12. Each family has to have 2.12 children in order to maintain your population level. If you don't, you'll drop back.
And we're going backwards.
We'll go backwards. We wouldn't have a social security problem if we hadn't aborted all the babies.
Yeah, look at the workers that we don't have now, paying into the system.
I have another question. How long before the true church is gonna have to go underground?
Here?
I've been talking with the leadership team and the deacons for better than a year about that already. I'm not so sure we're not approaching very quickly now the place where we're going to have local bodies where you will gather in some homes. And that's just the beginning of it.
Like the New Testament?
Yeah.
Literally, I watch David Jeremiah quite a bit. He literally did a service last year, and I was watching it on TV. His congregation's pretty considerable, and he literally told everybody before they went home, make sure you get in touch with one of the deacons or church staff. That way you can get to be part of a small group. That way, because I think they're thinking along the same lines.
Small groups have been a big deal in the convention. They found that that's where growth comes from. And I've said this before, nobody wants to listen to me. If you have more than 10 people in your Sunday school class, you need to start a new class. Unless you're just building an empire. Churches are probably going to thrive even more because of that same principle. If we ever have to break up into small home churches, we're probably going to reach more people than we are right now. And yet we won't have what we have. And I love what we have. I don't want to give up what we have. But I think we're going to be forced to it one of these days. Yeah, so the small groups, they're a part of a small church movement is a big deal. But he may be getting ready for that moment too. That would certainly, if you had that in place, you'd be ready to pull that trigger. Yeah. Yes.
In our lesson last Sunday, we were talking about the idols that they worshipped and how they would throw their babies in the fire and everything. But then it brought out the fact that since Roe v. Wade, there's been 60 million babies aborted. That's unthinkable.
What was it? Stalin, one of the communists said, somebody dies, that's a tragedy. A dozen people die, that's a tragedy. 1 million or 2 people die, that's just a statistic. It's hard to wrap your head around that large a number and what that actually means. I think it means a lot of things. You've heard me say it before that if Christians in America had not bought into the global warming, overpopulation of the earth thing that started back in the 60s, but we did, all through the 70s and the 80s when I had children. You have 2 children. You don't have more than that. You're actually a part of the problem if you have more than 2 children. Now, I had 2 children. I said, that's it. No, I'm kidding. But imagine if the Christian families in America had continued to have 4, 5, 6 children instead of 2. How many Christian voters would there be today? You think the devil's not got his hand behind this thing?
Well, that's why the Muslims will not.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
intentionally.
Yeah, they're smarter than we are in some ways.
You get into the multiplication thing.
Yeah. Well, you have 4 or 5 kids, and 2 or 3 of them turn out to be worthless, but at least 2 or 3 of them are going to vote right. That's not going to be too far from statistically the way it turns out. If you think you're going to, well, anyway. So our time is gone, but we have only touched on one of about 5 or 6 things that we have sacrificed because of the times that we're living. We're going to talk about those because they're really important, and we need to know them. So
I saw where the Canadian pastors were arrested again this past weekend.
same 2.
Yep.
So we started out with Proverbs 28. The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion. I wanted to end up, and we will do this next week as well, but I wanted to end up on a note of encouragement. In verse 2, the very next verse, for the transgression of a land, many are the princes thereof. In other words, there'll be plenty of people to blame when things go bad. But by a man of understanding and knowledge, the state thereof shall be prolonged. If enough people in America will wake up to the truth, we might be able to fix this thing. Maybe.
Isn't that the same as the watchman on the wall?
Yeah, same principle.
You know, same thing.
Yep. The watchman will be guilty of the blood if he does not warn everybody. So we will have to stop there.